Hello everyone, welcome to Biology with Rohit. So today I'm going to talk about the ELISA, which is enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. So basically I'm not going to talk about the procedures, I'm going to talk about the basic mechanism or the principle. So you can see the procedures from any book or the PDFs. Okay, so what is ELISA? So as per the name you can see that the enzyme linked, basically that means the antibody is linked with the enzyme. So and the antigen antibody reaction will going to occur. So basically when we say about an antibody, so you can see that this is a Y-shaped structure. So in the Y-shaped structure there are two portions, like one portion is FC portion, okay, and the other two, these two portion is the FAB portion. So when the antigen antibody reaction is occurring, so the FC portion remains the same, but the FAB portion varies depend upon the antigens and the specific antigens that will going to bind the antibody. Okay, so basically what happens in the ELISA, we have the antigen. First we give the antigen. Let's say this is a well plate, we give the antigen. So after that we are giving the antibody which is linked with the enzyme. Okay, so this enzyme, so after binding it we give the substrate. Okay, so after that we give the substrate and that will form the color. Okay, so by seeing the color we can say the reaction is positive or not. Okay, so this is basically the direct ELISA. This is basically the direct ELISA. Okay, so the direct ELISA, there are basically so in today we are not going to use the direct ELISA. We are going to use basically the indirect ELISA or the sandwich ELISA. So basically today I'm going to discuss the three types, like what I just discussed, the direct ELISA. So and two is indirect ELISA, and the sandwich ELISA. Okay, so the indirect ELISA, the main thing that is different in the indirect ELISA is the, what you can say, this, let's say this is the well plate, we are giving the antigen. Okay, so after that we are giving the antibody, but this antibody is primary antibody, and this antibody is will not have the, and what you can say, this antibody will not have the enzyme. Okay, this antibody will not have the enzyme. Okay, so after that we give the secondary antibody which is which will contain the enzyme. Okay, so this is the secondary antibody, and this is the enzyme. Okay, this is the enzyme, this is the secondary antibody, and after that the same procedure is we are going to add the substrate, and the color will form. Okay, so this is basically the indirect ELISA. So the question in so one question will occur, or one question can occur in your mind, why we are going to do indirect ELISA instead of direct ELISA. Basically there are two things actually. When let's say we have the antibody and we are going to attach the enzyme in it. Okay, so sometimes we can see the antibody work capacity will lose. Okay, so sometimes if there is the antigen present, but the antibody will not going to bind. Okay, so for that reason there is the chances of error. Okay, so there is a false negative result we can see. But and other thing is, when we are going to have an antibody and we are using the antibody as a antigen, so in the antibody, when the antibody and antibody binds, that means the antibody will going to bind different portion of the antigen. Okay, so when a antibody is shows as the antigen, so the antibody is going to bind the FC portion, FAB portion. Okay, there are multiple antibodies binding, and this is enzyme linked. So basically we can see that if there is the, if we can say this antibody is weak, so this antibody is not going to bind. Okay, but those two antibodies are also binding, so the chances of error is going to minimize. Okay, so this is the main reason, two main reasons that why we are going to indirect instead of direct. So we can, okay, so what is sandwich? So sandwich is basically, by the name of sandwich you can see that this, like those two, like you can see those two are breads and inside it is the butter. So the butter is the antigen and those two breads are the antibody. Those two are the antibody. So what happened in the sandwich. So basically in the well plate there is presence of antibody. After that we give the antigen. After that we give the antibody that is linked with the enzyme. Okay, so after that this is the same procedure, we add the substrate and the color formation is. So the main difference is there when we are coming from, like you can see, when we are coming from direct to sandwich, this is specific, and when we are going from direct to indirect, this is sensitive. Okay, so why sensitive? Sensitive is basically that what I just told you, there are multiple antigen antibody binding. So the sensitive means the result is basically sensitive. That means the substrate color that will form that will be more accurate. Okay, so and for the sandwich, why it is specific? Basically it is specific because what we can what I just told you, that there are in the antigen, there are in two sides there are binding of antigen to antibody, upper side and lower side. So the specifically with the antigen, the antibody, two antibodies will going to bind. So the specifically the antigen is identified. Okay, so basically, so I think I just missed one thing, like when we have a antigen, so basically in the antigen the single antibody will going to bind, but when the antibody used as antigen, so there are multiple antibody will going to bind. Okay, so these are the main things or the main basics of the ELISA. I think you can understand. If you have any question, you can ask me in the comment section.